Okay, so subtraction of integers. Go ahead and put your name here at the top. How are adding and subtracting integers related? So how to change a subtraction problem to addition. So you can change a subtraction problem to addition by adding the opposite of the second number. Okay, so steps to remember. Step 1, keep the first integer the same. Step 2, change the minus sign to a plus sign. Step 3, change the sign of the second integer to the opposite sign. So for example, if your original equation is -5 minus a -6, whenever we see a subtraction, we're going to rewrite it as addition. So we're going to rewrite that as keeping the first integer the same, that -5 is the same, changing this minus to a plus, and then this was a -6, but since I changed it, I have to change the one after it, because taking away a negative is like adding a positive. Taking away something bad is like adding something good, right? Adding positive. And so my answer would then be a +1. So same thing for my next example. I have a +10 minus a -3. I'm going to rewrite that as keeping my first the same, so +10, +10, changing my minus to the plus sign, changing my -3 to a +3. Because again, taking away a negative is the exact same thing as adding a positive. And I get a +13. Okay. So this sample, if I have a -3 minus a +2, I rewrite that as keeping my -3 the same, changing this to a plus sign, changing my +2 to a -2, and now I have a -3 plus a -2, which is a -5. Let's go ahead and work out some examples so we can do some sample problems for this. So going over here, let's look at some samples. All right, there we go. So let me grab a pen really quick here so it'll be easier to see. So we're going to go ahead and do some 1.3 sample problems. So we're doing some 1.3 sample problems. So for this one, all right, so for this one, if I find, so what is a 3 take away a 12? 3 take away a 12. Well, a couple of different ways I can do this. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to rewrite it. So a 3 take away the 12 is keep the first sign the same, change this to a plus sign. This 12 becomes a -12. So it turns into that. So 3 minus 12 is the same as 3 plus a -12. So I can either subtract the absolute values, absolute value of -12 minus the absolute value of 3, the greater absolute value minus the lesser absolute value, and I would get 12 minus 3, which is 9. Okay, 12 minus 3, which is 9. But I'm not done yet. Then I have to go back and look at my signs and say, okay, which one is further away from 0? Which one do I have more positives or do I have more negatives? And in this case, I have a -12, which is more negatives, so my answer would be a -9. Another way to show the same exact problem is to use a chips or some sort of a drawing, okay? So if I rewrote my problem as 3 plus a -12, I would show 3 positives. 1, 2, 3, plus a -12. So 1, 2, 3. 12. Okay. So we talked about zero pairs before. So remember, to make a zero pair, you need to have one positive and one negative, right? And if we put those together, we have a zero pair, which means we move forward one, we move back one, we're at the exact same spot. So we have a zero. So I can circle these and make a zero. I can circle these and make a zero. And I can circle these and make a zero. So remember how we talked about the additive identity, which is zero? So if we add zero to any number, the value doesn't change. So I have 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 negatives, which is what I got here. Okay. Another way to show that would be on a number line. And I can show that in two different ways. I can show that as starting out on positive 3, so I'm 3 to the right. And then I'm taking away 12, or I'm adding a negative 12, which means I'm moving to the left 12 spaces. So 1, 2, 3, back to 0, right? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's extend that out here. 9, 10, 11, 12. So I end up right here, which is 1, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, negative 6, negative 7, negative 8, negative 9. So it shows me at a negative 9, which is exactly what the drawing showed me and exactly what doing the subtracting the absolute value showed me as well. So the key you need to remember for subtraction is you must rewrite the expression. It's the number one thing that kids forget, and it's the number one thing that messes them up. Okay, let's try another sample problem. I'll leave that kind of right there so you can kind of see. So let's try another sample problem. Let's try negative 13 minus a negative 10. All right, so negative 13 minus a negative 10. We're going to keep this sign the same. We're going to change this to a plus, and then we're going to change this sign to the opposite. So we're going to rewrite that as negative 13, keeping it the same. This turns into a positive or plus sign. This turns into a positive. And you don't have to write the little plus sign. If you just leave it out, we will know that it's positive. Sometimes I just like to do that so it's very clear. So I have a negative 13 plus a positive 10. So if I'm looking at that, negative 13 plus a positive 10. All right, so I can do that a couple of different ways. I can say I'm going to start off, let's see, negative, we're going to count by twos, negative 2, negative 4, negative 6, negative 8, negative 10. And then we'll say that this is oh, excuse me. Don't listen to that. That's terrible. This is a 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And then this is a negative 2, negative 4, negative 6, negative 8, negative 10, 12. Okay. So if I start here at a negative 13, which would be right about here, right? I'm at a negative 13. And then I'm moving 10 to the right. Well, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I wind up right here between a negative 2 and a negative 4. Well, what's between a negative 2 and a negative 4? A negative 3. I can tell by absolute value that this is 13 spaces away from 0, and this is 10 spaces away from 0. So this is further away from 0, which means my answer is going to be negative. I have more negatives than I have positives. So my answer is going to be a negative 3. A way to show that with a drawing would be to draw 13 negatives, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13 negatives, and then draw 10 positives. Okay, those are my positives. I know. It can be fast. It doesn't have to be super artistic, right? So I have 2 negatives and 2 positives. That makes a 0 pair, because we all know a -2 plus a +2 is a 0. And these two together make a bunch of 0 pairs. And then these two make a bunch of 0 pairs. And then these two, and then these two. And I'm wound up with what left over. I have 1, 2, 3 negatives, which is what I determined up here. You could also do the absolute values and say, you know what? Absolute value, because they're opposite signs, I subtract the absolute values, and I could say absolute value of 13 minus the absolute value of a 10 gives us 13. Take away 10 gives us 3. And I know it's negative because this is further away from 0. So my answer is a -3. All right, so we're going to go ahead and I'm going to post a couple other sample problems at the end of this video. And then I want you to click what you think is the best answer.